So good morning, everybody. Welcome to our conference. We're so glad to have people here from around the country and around the world. And as you see on our slide here, we are very pleased to be sponsored by the National Institute of Environmental Health Science Conference Grant. And this is a joint effort of the Social Science and Environmental Health Research Institute here at Northeastern, PROTECT, which is the Superfund research program that involves both Northeastern and the University of Puerto Rico and University of Michigan, and also Silent Spring Institute, a research organization in Newton, Massachusetts, not too many miles away from us here. And you'll hear greetings from the other folks who are representing the other co-sponsors. We do want to have a very special thanks to NIEHS, and it's not just for the conference grant that allows us to do this for Thursday and Friday, and it's not just for the Superfund research program that they fund here, and it's not just for the research grants to Silent Spring and to Northeastern, but it's for a lot more. It's for a long-standing commitment to the integration and the transdisciplinary work that we really represent here, and for the community-based participatory research and environmental justice foci that they have been so important in. So we really are grateful to them and happy that some of their staff are here with us today. Also special thanks to the organizing committee, Julie Brody from Silent Spring and Jennifer Carrera, Jacob Motz, and Lauren Richter from SSEHRI. And a lot of the important work of the details from Stephanie Knudsen, our administrative assistant. And she's the one who just announced a couple things to you, and she and Miguel Montalva, who were out there at the registration desk, will help you with things that anybody with a green dot on their name tag can tell you where things are. I would like to start, before saying anything more, that we are dedicating this conference to Theo Colborn, who died last year. She was a visionary leader in environmental health. She coined the term endocrine disruptor. She was key in telling us about the importance of low levels of exposure, of timing of exposure, of multi-generational effects, and nonlinear effects. The wing spread conferences that she started in 1991 on EDCs were just incredibly important for the whole field of environmental health. And her book, Our Stolen Future, with Diane Dumanosky and Pete Meyers, was a landmark in this field. And she never stopped working. At the age of 76, she founded the Endocrine Disruptor Exchange, which has been a tremendous resource. And when she discovered all the EDCs and fracking fluids, she got very involved in the fracking health issues as well. So for all those things, we just owe her, even though you may think she can't hear us, a special round of applause. We've had a long-term friendship with Alternatives for Community Environment, ACE, an EJ group, and ACE and the Environmental Justice League of Rhode Island have also been part of the planning for this, and that includes organizing this as one of the events for the conference, a panel that they're doing as well, and a workshop, two workshops that they're both involved with tomorrow. But it turned out that when we planned this conference, they also had their annual Jammin' for Justice, which is a great festivity celebrating, in their case, 22 years of work in environmental justice in Boston. And we are so happy that it coincides, because we want all of you to come over there tonight. Even if you haven't bought a ticket, you can come there. There's no set amount. They would like people to pay, but anything you can give. And the special treat also is that we have the Environmental Justice League of Rhode Island Eco Bus. It's a biodiesel bus that they converted from an old bus, and it's used for all sorts of environmental justice educational activities. And we're just really tickled that they're bringing it up here. And that bus will leave here around 5:45 to go just about half a mile, 3/4 of a mile down the road to where Jammin' for Justice is. So please, it's going to be a great festivity. There'll be dancing, there'll be a few talks, there'll be a silent auction, and you get to meet a lot of the environmental justice community from the Boston area. I want to tell you a little bit about SSEHRI and our mission and history. We began in 1999 as the Contested Illnesses Research Group at Brown, and when I moved here in 2012, we formed SSEHRI as a new university-sponsored institute. We now have 6 faculty members, 3 postdocs, 11 grad students, and 5 more coming in September. Our specialty is to conduct research at this intersection that we are highlighting today and tomorrow, social science and environmental health. We do cross-training of scientists and environmental health, social scientists and environmental health scientists at all levels, whether they be undergraduates, grad students, postdocs, or faculty. And we nourish that intersection by integrating environmental justice, CBPR, and science and technology studies, and social determinants of health in everything that we do. We expand the sensibilities of this special social science environmental health collaboration across many researchers, and we train new folks to think about that and to do it. And we're very happy to have had this long collaboration with Silent Spring, not just now at Northeastern, but at Brown for a long, long time. So that's a lot of the background to why we're doing this conference. I'm not going to go into detail about all of our projects, but we have a lot of them. We work very, very extensively with Protect, and you'll hear from them soon. We have an NSF training program from the Science and Technology Studies program. We have an NSF ethics education program teaching ethics to environmental engineers and to marine scientists. We have several grants from NIEHS with Silent Spring on biomonitoring, report back ethics, and on data privacy. We have Project and Flame Retardant Policy, and a new one that just got funded recently on perfluorinated compounds. These are the Teflon and Scotchgard and other chemicals that are used as stain-resistant and stick-resistant substances that are very, very profoundly distributed throughout this society. We have Project in Public Health Genomics. We have Brownfields in Milwaukee project. Several things on citizen science and fracking, including air quality monitoring in Pennsylvania and hydrogen sulfide sensing in Wyoming and Texas. Project on digital stories online from the shale area. Some real-time visualization project with thermal fishing bobs that can use inexpensive devices to test water temperature. We have balloon mapping and advocacy in pet coke waste piles in Chicago, and crowdsourcing analysis of disasters. So the question is, does the science, social science, environmental health collaboration work? And I would say we made it to the White House. This is a photo of Sarah Wiley. It's not the one that's got her shaking the president's hand, because they won't let us use that, but there you do see the West Wing in back of you, so it really did happen. And we made the State House. That's Danny Faber from SSEHRI with Governor Patrick when he signed the EJ executive order, and some images of other things that we've done. Does it work? Well, look the kind of things that are getting published. Sociology, in one of its top journals, is publishing on telomere length and social determinants. Environmental health is publishing on how airborne metals and particulates are related to criminal activity. So clearly, journals on both sides are publishing stuff that has this kind of integration and collaboration. And we're just tickled that only a week ago, 10 days ago, May 12th, our article on this got published, and really tickled that like there were about 800 views of this in the first week alone. So this is something that is included in your flash drive, and as you know, we have this wonderful flash drive that I don't know if you've gotten a chance to look at it yet and plug it into your computer, but it's our curriculum project, which you'll hear a whole lot about from several folks here as well, from Robin Dodson, Jennifer Carrera, and Christine Vitovic. So chock full of material, articles, syllabi, and videos that we've been producing. Our newest really exciting news is that we're going to have a T32 Training Grant, and that's going to give us the ability to nourish more and more generations of graduate students and postdocs in this very exciting collaboration. And this is a project that Silent Spring and SSEHRI have put together. It also involves a lot of our colleagues here on campus in Protect and elsewhere on campus. I'm also very happy to tell you that we have a special issue of New Solutions that will come out next year sometime, and people will have about 6 months to get articles together for this, but Julia Brody and I will be co-editing the special issue. If you don't know New Solutions, it's really something you should. It's a great journal of environmental and occupational health. And we've asked all of the speakers at the conference to please consider putting together articles based on this. We are also going to have an open call. We are audio taping, and one of the reasons we're doing that is because it'll help speakers as they adapt their talks so they can listen to it. Anybody who does not want their talk recorded, of course, is free to say so. We would love to be able to post those audio online on our website, as well as to share the slides that people have here. Because like you saw, I went through very quickly and didn't tell you all the details, and you probably want to get a chance to see that stuff later. I also want to point out that of related interest here is that NIH's entire Office of Behavioral and Social Science is having a celebration of its 20th anniversary as an important office in NIH, and this is going to be in June on the NIH main campus in Bethesda. And so you can check the agenda there too and see how people throughout the institutes and centers of NIH are doing social science work. So that's all I want to say. At this point, we're going to hear from our other co-sponsors first. And I'm also not going to give introductions generally, and the presiders are not even going to really be presiders. They're just going to get up here and say, okay, here's who's speaking. We want all the time possible so that we can actually talk with each other and share with each other. The two exceptions will be, I will say a few words of introduction for Gwen Collman, our special guest, and also for Goji Cook, who is our keynote speaker, but otherwise, that's about it. So I'm going to now bring up Julia Brody from Silent Spring Institute.
Thanks, it's really great to be here. It's so fun to see so many of you that I've met over the years in different places and get to talk to only by email. And some new people I'm really looking forward to meeting. I'm really interested to hear the stories of how you came to this rather unusual place, or unusual right now, because I'm hoping that as we figure out how you came in, those stories will help us figure out how to make this a bigger circle that is more influential in the various other circles that we're a part of. And I'm also interested in hearing what your hopes are, what you're working on now, but where you would like this field to go. And so I thought I would kick it off by telling how I got here and what my hopes are. So apropos Theo Colborn, 20 years ago, the Massachusetts Cancer Registry, for the first time, issued cancer rates by town. And women in Massachusetts saw a stunning pattern of nearly every town on Cape Cod having significantly higher breast cancer incidence than the rest of the state. And they decided to form a lab of their own, Silent Spring Institute, to figure out why. At the time that scientific and medical communities and the press were very skeptical. And the same thing was going on Long Island and Marin County, where women were observing patterns in breast cancer incidence, which Phil Brown has called popular epidemiology, and we're saying this isn't okay with us, we need to do something about it. But the existing scientific and medical community wasn't really paying attention. This Silent Spring Institute was founded in the year that NIH first required women to be included in clinical trials. So that's the context in which we were founded. And at the same time, down the street from here at Tufts University, Anna Soto and Carla Sonnenschein were doing traditional breast cancer research, growing human breast cancer cells. And Anna came into the lab and found that her control cells, which were estrogen sensitive, but were supposed to be controls, not exposed to anything, were growing. And after months of cleaning her lab and starting over and getting rid of her research assistant and starting over, she discovered that the formulation for the plastic tubing she was using had changed, and the nonylphenol was acting like estrogen and stimulating her control cells to grow. And Our Soul and Future was published around that time, and I found that very provocative, and I joined Silent Spring Institute because of the opportunity to work for activist-based science organization pursuing this also very new and transformative science. And then I met Phil. Phil wanted to study this phenomenon. He saw these breast cancer activists in Massachusetts, Long Island, Marin County, as part of a new health social movement, and he wanted to interview us. And as he did his work, just describing what was going on, it was incredibly powerful for my board of directors, who are not scientists, and just describing the barriers to the work we were trying to do was incredibly encouraging, clarifying, and ultimately empowering, and gave them the courage, really, to go on. My founders have many times said if they had known what they learned, partly from Phil's work, about the systems that were barriers to prevention science, they wouldn't have probably had the guts to do what they did. But seeing it written down in a book and in articles and described, instead of calling them hysterical, calling them pioneers, calling them a movement, was that was incredibly helpful to Silent Spring Institute to sustain our organization. And I also want to say that after that, Shobha Srinivasan and Gwen Collman and now Sima Finn also were like incredible about listening to what was going on in the breast cancer environmental movement and connecting us with the wider network of science that was going on nationally through NIEHS, and that was like an incredibly important additional collaboration. So environmental health focus environmental health altogether is still a tiny science community. I'm often reminded of that when I'm like in the breast cancer world. And prevention above the level of individual lifestyle change is really just not on the agenda for medicine or healthcare. So that's my hope, is that we can go beyond describing the barriers and describing the pain that's been caused by environmental disasters, whether they're acute or slow moving, and start thinking about what are the levers for change, and looking at what happened to climate science. How can we not do it that way? What went wrong? How can the toxics movement go down a different path? How can we get the climate science onto a different path, where this science and prevention and a health focus can become a broad part of our approach to wellness in our society? And so that's what I'm asking all you social scientists here to do, is figure out where are the levers for change and how can we activate them.
Okay, now José Cordero from the University of Puerto Rico Medical Campus and co-director of PROTECT, the Puerto Rico Testsite to Explore Contamination Threats, will give a greeting.
Thank you, Phil. Good morning.
Good morning.
Buenos dias.
Buenos dias.
Wow, wonderful to have such great bilingual audience. So I guess I could do my remarks in Spanish. See? Well, good morning. It's great to be here, and I'd like to thank Phil Brown and his group for putting together this really historic conference. It is really my pleasure to welcome you and on behalf of PROTECT, the Puerto Rico Testsite for Exploring Contamination Threats. This is a large consortium that includes, it is Northeastern, and our PI is sitting right there. You'll be hearing from him later today, Dr. Akram Al-Shawakwa, and Phil is also a great member of the group. Also, we have here Dr. Carmen Milagros Perez, who is co-PI in the community engagement. And so listening to Julia talk about the origins of the Silent Springs, it reminded me a little bit of how did we ended up developing a project that focuses on preterm birth in Puerto Rico. And initially we knew that we wanted to work together, and there were options of doing work on cancer. There were issues in the Vieques Island that also were very important. But actually it was the community and the a collective work of the community that led us to say, hey, we need to work together with you to try to understand why Puerto Rico has the highest rate of preterm birth of any jurisdiction, when we were concerned here that about 12% of the babies in the U.S. was premature. In Puerto Rico it was nearly 20%. And the work that already had been done indicated that the usual suspects of healthcare services was not a factor. But at the same time, we knew that Puerto Rico had the highest density of national priority list sites by square mile than any other jurisdiction in the U.S. New Jersey, by its size, had maybe more sites, but per square mile, we had more. So the project is now in its 5th year, and we have recruited a large cohort of pregnant women, about 900, and we hope to complete 1,800. And one of the things we've learned is that the exposure to certain endocrine disruptors like phthalates, BPA, and others in Puerto Rico among pregnant women is actually much higher than in the U.S. So it is on one side and very important in terms of understanding how phthalates and endocrine disruptors may lead to preterm birth, but also it is very important for us in terms of one, understanding the social determinants of health that lead to exposures, but also how once we have the results both in the individual fashion but together in terms of the findings, how to talk with the community and together with the community communicate, and not only communicate but also be able to take the actions needed to reduce or eliminate these exposures. So for us it's a great opportunity, and I think that the conversations and the dialogue that we'll have today, I think, will get us closer to our that goal of being able to merge even more what the social sciences and environmental health sciences do together. So thank you, and I'm very glad to be here and look forward to a very interesting and energetic discussions in the next 2 days. Thank you.
So I do want to say a few words about Gwen Collman. There's even more, in the bio sketches. We've got a whole handout for you, so you'll know everything about everybody who's speaking here over the next couple of days. But Gwen will be giving us very special greetings as the head of the Division of Extramural Research and Training at NIEHS. And she leads there a staff of 60 professionals in all kinds of scientific program administration, peer review, and the management and administration of over 1,500 active grants every year. She directs scientific activities and training and career development across the entire field of environmental health sciences, and also oversees very specifically the implementation of the Superfund research program and the worker training and education program. She's responsible for having developed some very, very critical interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary programs, including the Breast Cancer Environment Research Centers program, the NIEHS EPA Joint Funded Centers for Children's Environmental Health and Protection and Disease Prevention, and the Gene, Environment, and Health Initiative. Also under her guidance, a team of people at NIEHS crafted a vision for the Partnerships in Environmental Public Health, which is a wonderful umbrella that brings together all of the community-oriented work of the Institute. She's the recipient of numerous NIEHS Merit Awards, 2 NIH Directors Awards, and the Department of Health and Human Services Secretary's Award for Distinguished Service. So we're very happy to have her here today, Gwen Collman.
Thank you, Phil. Thanks very much for inviting me and for having this conference. About a year and a half or so ago, we had a similar conference that Phil spearheaded in Philadelphia, and that was sort of the first time that I was in a gathering of folks in the social sciences and environmental health sciences. And it was a really energizing 2 days. I learned a lot. I met a lot of people, and I heard about work from totally different perspectives than I would think about on a given day. And so was really excited to hear that there was going to be another conference similar to this. So I have slides that are not here. So let's try to get those first. Maybe somebody can help me do that. And while you're putting them up, let me tell you a little bit about, as Julie said, our path here, and how not only how I got to care about this topic, but also how NIEHS got to appreciate the multidisciplinary approaches that we have today. So let me start by saying that, and I got to press a button here, but I didn't. Okay. So let me start by saying that when I started as a young PhD in public health and environmental epidemiology and in environmental health sciences, it was about measuring exposures and looking at disease outcomes. And if you were in environmental health sciences, you were in the scary world of chemistry and physics, and you were looking at a variety of different carcinogens or other chemicals and radiation, and then you were looking at, big impact health effects like cancer. And that, was back in the 80s, long time ago, and very narrow approach, but a lot of, deep work. A lot of the work in our institute is mechanistic science, people at the bench, and there wasn't, I think, as great of appreciation of the totality of exposures and the roads of which different places you can get exposed. So a lot has changed in the 30 years I've been at NIEHS, and as the field has developed, and many of you here have been the pioneers pushing us in these new directions, so we appreciate that. This slide here gives you a very small bit of highlights of various programs that we've developed over the years. And you might say, well, I was part of some program and it's not on here. Well, we found out that there were so many of them from 1992 on, which is when I started in the extramural program and when Dr. Olden was our director. And he was very visionary in this regard, looking at the public health impacts of our exposure history and who was exposed. And the fact of, communities and folks who were in situations where there was an undue burden of the exposures that we were learning about. And the whole issue of health disparities, environmental justice really became part of the NIEHS mission, back in the early 90s. So in addition to these programs up here, we've had specific programs in environmental justice. We've had a lot of work with our NIH partners on community-based participatory research. We're not the only ones who have this piece of the pie, but our focus has always been on the environmental exposure part, bringing social determinants and physical chemical exposures together, looking at the interactions or how the causal webs complement or interact with each other. And our other sister agencies, may be only focusing on some of the social factors. So I won't go through all of these individual programs, some of which you know, some of which you don't. If you don't know about them and something intrigues you, just catch me at a break. I'm happy to talk endlessly about any one of these. As Phil told you, I've been involved in developing many of these and working very closely with our program staff and the extramural community. Oftentimes we've had advisors come and help us frame these questions to put the program together in a way that brings together social science and environmental health science and medical science and other very important pieces. So as you may know, about 2.5 years ago we developed a strategic plan at NIEHS. And again, it's a very broad-based plan. Most strategic plans have a few very targeted specific goals, not us. We have 11 very broad goals. And I want to just show you that the concepts of social science, the folks who do work in the social sciences are very integrated into many of the goals. So if we talk about goal 3, which is exposure research, going from measuring and biomonitoring and developing methods to measure chemicals in air, water, soil, and in the body has really expanded to consider not just those physical characteristics, but social issues and the social determinants. And in order to really bound around the entire totality, there are all of these cofactors of behavior and culture and environment, both your built environment and your neighborhood and your socio-political environment, and not only in the U.S. but also globally, that really impacts. So we have expanded that concept, and the exposome is to measure everything, and of course it's a difficult challenge, but we hope we're up for it with all of our partners in all the disciplines. When we talk about goal 4, we're looking at mixture. So we used to think about mixtures of one PCB isomer and another one. Or maybe we would have expanded to think about metals and PCBs. Well, we're way beyond that now. We're thinking about all of these cofactors in our environment, the chemical and non-chemical stressors, infectious diseases and other factors, behavioral factors, socioeconomic status, nutrition, things that we know other folks in the world have been studying. We want to bring them into environmental health to look at the totality and how they're all working together. Goal 5 is about emerging threats. So, what we're studying today may not be what we're studying in 10 years. So how do we identify things, both in our physical world and our social world, that may be detrimental to our health? And how do we develop methods to get there, to study them? And of course, the whole disaster response research activities, which I know many of you are aware of and part of, has come out of this idea of emerging threats and being ready to study the things that are happening. Health disparities. Well, this is something NIEHS, since the early 90s has been quite active in developing. So the field of health disparities is a field unto itself. There are whole departments in schools of public health that are looking at health disparities, but very few of the traditional health disparities researchers are working on problems in the environmental health world. And one of our goals with our strategic plan and moving forward was to develop this cadre of people who could understand the environmental justice or the environmental health disparities, and we have new programs developed in that area. We started years ago with a program on the interaction between social and physical factors. Now we have an emerging program that we hope to make awards by the end of the year in environmental health disparities with partners at NIH and the EPA. We have a goal number 10 in environmental health economics. Really new, really different for NIEHS. But when we look at the impacts of our work, what happens with the basic science research, with the translational science in the literature? How do we link that to the policy impacts? How do we know the effects of the work of the exposures that we have in our world? And one way that people understand the effects is if you can monetize them. So, how much production of a certain chemical equals a cost in healthcare, or lives lost, or disability, dailies, which is like how the whole global burden of disease has been characterized. What are the tangible dollars associated with the production of endocrine disrupting chemicals? Brand new for NIEHS, and so this is a goal that's really starting at the beginning, working forward. So the folks who work at the NIEHS, have no background in this area. EPA has a mandate in their regulatory process to do cost-benefit analysis, so there is a field of environmental economics, but we haven't embraced it yet. But we've been doing some developmental work within NIEHS and partnering with folks out in the field working on different things, and I have a slide to give you some examples of those as well. And the last goal on here is communication. That's goal 11. But we also have training, which Phil mentioned, the new training program here. But it's also about communicating between researchers, stakeholders, the public, communities, all of the different disciplines that we have as part of environmental health sciences. And just one small anecdote on the training piece. So a couple of years ago, we had our training directors come together, which we do every 2 or 3 years. We were having a sort of small breakout session where we were brainstorming about what is training going to look like in environmental health sciences, and what are we looking towards the future. And I said to the training directors, well, what are your new ideas? Because we've been funding a lot of training programs for a lot of years, and where are we moving? And, there was like this look, what do you mean? And I said, well, we've been putting out initiatives over the years in all of these areas, all of these disciplines, all of these new directions. And I don't really see all of that reflected in your training programs. And so the toxicology directors got really nervous, and they looked at me like, wait a minute, you think we can, going to start training in environmental justice in our very traditional toxicology program? And I said, well, yeah. Because environmental health science is changing. And if you've been listening to what our directors have said and what our programs and our RFAs, training that person who can do well in the lab by themselves, that's an okay thing. But training for people to work on teams and with other scientists and other disciplines is really key for the future. So I'm very happy to have seen some new applications coming in with this broadened approach, with a training program in social sciences, and very happy to be able to say that NIEHS is supporting this new activity here at Northeastern with Phil's leadership. So, we have big expectations, and just so you know, put it right out there. So just very quickly, our portfolio is full of concepts of social science. It's sort of hard to quantify. Some of our projects are specifically looking at factors that you, sociologists, anthropologists, historians would, key right in. And some of our bigger programs have it sort of merged into all, like in the questionnaire, many factors or new variables that people are studying that have a behavioral aspect or knowledge and abilities or cultural aspects. We, of course, try to have our researchers work in a lot of disparate populations, and there needs to be a lot of cultural sensitivity and engagement, appropriate engagement based on the cultures and values of the communities that we're working. As Phil mentioned, our Partnerships for Environmental Public Health program is all about that. So to sort of always keeping that in the front part of our mind and working very intentionally on making sure that these programs have those pieces to it. Evaluation, that's another very big area where social scientists can really help us look at the programs that we have, both from a process and an output kind of potential, and then of course the impact of all of these things. So this is just, I just give you a list of the kinds of topic areas that we have in our portfolio. And when I first started in HTML, we didn't have but a very tiny sliver, and look at how that sliver has grown. So very good about that. So how did the social science perspectives inform me as a science administrator and an executive at NIEHS who helps to guide the course? What kinds of science are we really talking about? What are the topics? It's not just a chemical, it's the concept that goes with studying those chemicals. And so here on the blue side, we have some of these things like risk perception, cultural competencies, the ethics piece of understanding exposure, the ethics pieces in studying genomics and populations who maybe have disparate kinds of burdens, the variety of cofactors. We're very interested in messaging. How can we take the information from our studies and give it to people and share it with them and discuss it with them and have the concepts of the community come back into the research, so it's a two-way dialogue, not just us, professing our knowledge. So we've been thinking about many of these things on the blue side for a long time, and some of them have found their way into our programs. Very different methodologies. So how do you take research like this and send it to the right study section so that they can appreciate the power of oral histories or qualitative methodologies? The majority of our environmental health science work goes to just a number of study sections where they're looking at laboratory methods or very traditional epidemiologic focuses. So we have educating to do on all sides, and we have to make sure that the research that you propose ends up in the right home for it to be peer reviewed so that we are able to support it and have it be part of the NIEHS portfolio. I mentioned economics before. I just want to bring to your attention that very recently there was a set of papers that was published. A group of folks are looking at this question. The European Union is interested in new regulations related to endocrine disrupting chemicals. And so the group brought together economists, public health people, environmental health scientists, and used some methodologies that are used in the economics world to monetize the burden. And it's quite substantial. It's over 100, I have it in here. I want to misquote the numbers. It's actually quite large. Many billions of dollars of effects for the endocrine disruptor chemical world. Here, $165 billion to $256 billion from the sort of contemporary burden of endocrine disrupting chemicals in our world. So they're looking at obesity, neurobehavioral outcomes, reproductive outcomes. So if you pull all of these diseases together, what's the attributable fraction for endocrine disrupting chemicals? And of course there are many chemicals. And then, how can you monetize that? So this is an approach, it's peer reviewed. There's, I'm sure, a lot of debate about the methods, but this is becoming much more part of the world of environmental health sciences, and it really requires people from different disciplines to critique the databases that are out there, to find different sources of data so that we can put value, whether it be healthcare costs or social costs or educational costs, for folks who have the negative effects of these chemicals and live their lifetime with that burden. So brand new area for us. We created an annotated bibliography of environmental health publications a couple of years ago. We want to keep adding to that. We will put that on our website as a tool for investigators so that you can see what the literature is and help to bring that as part of the work that you're doing. I've been very much involved in the breast cancer and environment world since 1994 and have worked in a lot of different projects over the years, and we've seen a lot of evolution as to how that research is being done and with who the partners are that are on the research teams. Obviously, many of you know that there's a big partnership with the advocacy community. And one of the things that has been interesting to me, and I think a colleague of yours, Sabrina McCormick, was very interested in this process of how the advocates were working together and did some scholarly work in studying a program that I was very much a part of, which was able to publish this sort of analysis of the pieces of our programs. And this is not the only program that has had this look, this evaluate. It's not really truly an evaluation. It's more scholarly work on sort of the pieces of the programs and how they fit together, and are they evaluating? Are they reaching their goals? We set out RFAs that have goals in them, and we like to hope that when we have 5 years of funding, we reach our goals. But we don't always look that carefully. We just move on to the next program and keep things moving. But to have folks from the social sciences come and look and tell us, did we hit it on target? What are the recommendations? And the recommendations usually come from the players or the consumers of the knowledge. And so that's a perspective that's very valuable, and I've appreciated it more and more over the years to have folks that are sort of outside my comfort zone look at the work that we're developing to say, did you hit your mark? Are you on target? And if not, what are the recommendations? So I just use Sabrina as an example because when it first came out, it didn't feel so good, right? We were all about criticism and feedback, but I thought that idea was a good one, but other people, have some very helpful feedback and constructive criticism on how to make those programs better. And we have used this kind of analysis to improve our programs for the next phases of RFA. So keep doing it. It keeps us as the government program development folks on target and keeps us focused on trying to get as much out of our research programs as we can. I'll just quickly go through. We have been funding folks in anthropology for quite a long time. I'm sure you all know Tom Arkery and Sarah Quant's work from North Carolina here. That they've spent their career looking at migrant farm workers and the very unique social conditions that they live in our state, and have been funded by NIEHS for many, many years, looking at different pieces of the question, and it's been evolving over time. Sort of started as an observational kind of work. What are the health outcomes that they have? And now has moved into work safety climate and culture, and how the living conditions and other social activities that they're involved in affect the health of that community. That kind of work helps to provide background for improvements in healthcare to the vulnerable communities. It helps to inform interventions, and when the interventions are done, without that social context, without social scientists being part of those interventions cannot be sustainable or as effective even as research. So we're particularly proud of this work and find it quite interesting. One last science area is the global environment, the global environmental health landscape. And again, without those cultural contexts, without understanding truly the communities and the populations where these exposures occur and the health effects, and the policy or the environment in which they live and the context of which these exposures come and how important the exposures, whether they're positive or negative, are to the economic health and the development of the communities, the integrity of the communities, the interactions between communities in the developing world. Again, interventions can't work in the developing world if you are especially coming in from the West with some great new idea to see if they will be adopted. The whole field of implementation science within the cook stove community, and there's a lot of interest in changing out cooking practices in the developing world because there's been development of new stoves that have less emissions. It cannot be successful without teams of behavioral and social scientists being part of that work. And we always knew that, but we are really now seeing it implemented. We have a cook stove network that's being developed, and there's an implementation adoption piece of that, because just having the technology, just looking to reduce the exposures isn't enough for the sustainability of those communities, and it's not going to affect the overall change in disease rates if we can't keep those things going. So I'll just end by saying, you know, I have a lot of new friends and new disciplines over the years in my work as an environmental health scientist. It's been a really exciting opportunity for me to meet folks who are interested in the same questions and problems that I am interested in and that our institute is interested in. And it's, I think, helped the institute very much be a prevention institute to focus on reduction of exposure, changes in lifestyle, changes in social policy that affect our totality of exposures, to understand how all of those pieces, we've always say in epidemiology, you know, that any chronic disease has a very complex causal web. Well, we're not only now, you know, I think in our modern age, we're considering all of these factors as part of the causal web. We didn't consider them all when I first started at the Institute and in this field. So I think that's a real welcome addition. And of course, having all of you be part of the NIEHS family in one way or the other, or part of the future family. And I'd be happy to talk to any of the junior faculty here or postdocs about future opportunities with NIEHS. I welcome you all to the NIEHS world, and I'm excited to hear all of the presentations here at the meeting. So thank you very much.